the following webcast announcement. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed, live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Members and public speakers are reminded to activate their microphones before speaking and turn them off when they have finished. Thank you. And good evening. My name is Councillor Sue Jones and I am chairing tonight's meeting of Plans Committee A. I'd just like to start the meeting with a few introductions. For information for members of the public, to my right is my Vice Chairman, Councillor Will Hoffman. And then to his right is our Democratic Services, Vivian Messenger. And we're also joined from Democratic Services by Laura Kerman on Teams. To my left, we have got James Rogers and Rianne from the Planning Department. And again, we're joined by Mohammed Rahman on Teams from the Planning Department. We have Amanda here for legal representation today. And on my far right, suddenly won't forget, we've got Becky doing the webcast for us. Members of the public, I think you have all been given the advice on the time limit for your speaking. If I could ask you to keep to those very rigidly, please. It's much nicer for you to wind up properly within your time rather than have your finish interrupted by me saying, I'm sorry, your time is up. You're going to have to finish now. So when the buzzer rings, if you are still speaking, you really have only got about 10 seconds to finish up. All right? Members of the committee, I will take you through the speakers for each item as normal. There are a couple of items that we are looking at, and following the Planning Officer's recommendation, we are going to be discussing items 10 and 11 together. They are 223 applications. We will then follow that by discussing, we're then also going to take 12 and 13 together, but following Planning Officer's recommendation, we'd like to bring items 12 and 13 to you first. They are the most recent 2024 applications, and we will discuss those combined, and we will then make decisions. Although we're discussing them together, there will be two separate votes for items 12 and 13, and then we will look at items 10 and 11 together, but there will be two separate votes on item 10 and item 11. Is everybody happy with that? As I say, it is on Planning Officer's recommendation and request. Thank you, members. I think speakers, while I'm still on the point of being on taking the combined items, I think Vivian has explained to you your time limit. Obviously, if you're speaking on two combined items, instead of having, you would normally be allowed 2 lots of 3 minutes, so you are therefore allowed 6 minutes on the combined items. Doesn't mean you have to fill the 6 minutes, but you are more than willing if you would like to. Right, okay. I think that covers us for items 1 and 2, members. So I'd like to go to item 3, which is apologies for absence. Thank you, Vivian.
Chairman, I've had apologies from Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. And substitute members?
I've got Councillor Matthews substituting for Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Councillor Matthews, for substituting. Much appreciated. Okay, item 5, members, is declarations of interest. Any declarations on this item, on this agenda? That's a nice, straightforward one.
Got one from...
Oh, so sorry.
Items 8 and 9, the applicant is known to me.
Thank you. Okay, any further? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, we can move straight on to the planning items, starting with item 7. I haven't done the minutes. I'm so keen to get to... Well, one very important item. I do apologise, members. I have missed the fact that item 6, I need to ask you if you are all in agreement with the minutes from our previous meeting. Are there any comments first? In that case, members, are you all happy that I sign those minutes as a true record of the meeting? Thank you very much indeed, members. Okay, now they can let us loose on the planning items. So our first item is planning is item 7 on the agenda, and this is EPF 2817/23, Embliss Farm, Binder Loams Limited, it's Binder Loams Limited, and Fifield Road. This is found on pages 10 to 18 of your agenda. And I'm going to hand straight over to James, who is going to be presenting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. So, yes, item 7 on tonight's agenda is Embliss Farm, which is located in the general area of Moreton. The application is for the erection of 2 new barns for commercial purposes. Application's before you tonight because it's been called to committee by Councillor Hadley, and officers are recommending that planning permission is refused. So, let's start with the site location. I'm just going to change my pointer. So, let's start with the application site. It's located to the north of Fifield Road, within a very rural location. It's approximately 3 miles to the north of Ongar Town Centre and 1 mile east of Moreton itself. So, as you can see, very isolated. Very predictably, the site is located within the boundaries of the Metropolitan Greenbelt. So, on the site at the moment, as I said, it's a commercial enterprise for the mixing, processing and storage of topsoil, which is then used at various high-profile sporting events all around the country. So this is what's currently on the site. And just to be clear, this is not an agricultural use. This is previously developed or brownfield land. So, turning to the proposal, it's for the erection of these 2 large barns on the site. It's to enclose the otherwise open storage of the topsoil that's currently stored and processed on the site. Whilst the location of the proposed barns is within the wider context of a previously developed site, it does overtly spread development eastwards away from the built-up area, which is located further west. So this spread of development, combined with the large scale of the barns shown, we say would cause substantial harm to the openness of the greenbelt, and therefore it fails to meet the necessary exception to an appropriate development of the redevelopment of pre-developed land or limited infill in pre-developed land. As everyone will know, the government recently changed the MPPF, and consideration, as you can see in the agenda, has been given to the new exception to an appropriate development given by the government, which is in paragraph 155 of the MPPF, and it concerns whether the site could be reasonably determined to be grey belt, but it's more than just demonstrating that it's grey belt land. So as members will see from the report, it has been concluded to be so, that it is grey belt land. But another requirement of that exception is that there must be a demonstrable unmet need for that type of development in the district, and we say that that case has not been shown. In those circumstances, the proposal is inappropriate development in the greenbelt, which is by definition harmful. It causes additional harm to its openness due to its sheer scale and size. And the MPPF is very clear on that any harm to the greenbelt must be afforded substantial weight. In such circumstances, very special circumstances are required to clearly outweigh the harm, and we say that no suitable case has been advanced to clearly outweigh that harm. And so, therefore, it's recommended that planning permission is refused for the reasons set out in tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we do have a speaker on this item. This is the applicant's agent, John McClarty. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, members and of the Planning Committee. I'm here to strongly support the application on behalf of Binder Loams Limited, a cornerstone of English cricket and businesses of exceptional importance both locally and nationally from particularly a leisure perspective. Binder Loams is a long-established business enterprise that's been set up back in 1926 and has a long track record working alongside Lords, the Oval, Edgbaston and grassroots cricket and football across the United Kingdom, more recently working with some of the Premier League teams and looking at places such as Wimbledon. So there's quite a history here. We've been trying to engage with the local authority for 2 or 3 years. As the case officers confirmed there, this location is actually where an existing very large mound of soil is located, higher than this building, much higher than this building, and in a location that is within the confines of the yard, as you'll have seen from the pictures. Lots of landscape visual impact assessment work at great expense was undertaken, showing lots of plans. They've not been presented to you this evening, but we've gone to length and spent lots of money to do things properly at the request of officers. This is a business that really needs this. There are many locations that things can happen, but this is a very appropriate location for sorting soil in the countryside, in a location that has been very accepted for many, many years, certainly since 1926. As a result of this, the proposal isn't to create more traffic movements, it's to keep the soil dry and actually process the ability to feed the clubs and institutions around the country that require this product. It's fundamental to the business's success and actually establishing the business longer term in this location. It creates a barrier to the openness of the green belt by containing a lot of the mass. One point I think is interesting, it's an interesting debate for all of us really, is how agricultural buildings are consented. I work for Ceres Property and Ceres Rural. We have a track record of working with landowners across the United Kingdom and one famously in Oxfordshire. And as a result of that, we've looked very carefully at how buildings come forward under 28-day notice and how things are actually brought forward for agricultural needs. There are many, many cases of larger buildings on the boundary to this location within 5 miles. I'm quite sure there are 3 or 4 more recent consents where agricultural buildings have been allowed. This is for the storage of soil, the sorting of soil to go into clubs around the United Kingdom. I take the point from officers with regards to how Greenbelt's got to be managed, but in terms of very special circumstance, we're absolutely convinced we've worked hard on that and worked to produce a very strong case and put it forward to officers. So in summing up really, this is about the future of a business that works across the region and nationally. So I look forward to the debate this evening and thank you very much for listening to me. Much appreciated, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That is the only speaker on this item, members. So I'm going to open this up for discussion, just to reiterate at the moment that this recommendation is for refusal at the moment. All right. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I was quite confused by this one because I sat through a meeting delivered by James the other evening and explaining the new regulations and the new classification as grey belt. So immediately looked at this, saw the previous developed land and thought, well, that's our first one that fits into that bracket. So I couldn't understand the reason for refusal. So following the report we've heard, there was a mention of a need to demonstrate the need of it in the district. Well, I think looking through the report and reading what this business does, I personally think it's the sort of business I mean, they're delivering a nationwide service. That's something this district and this council should be proud of. We should be sort of supporting businesses like this in our district. And if that's not an argument for it to be important to the district, it's a business that is bringing kind of national pride, dealing with huge events and huge stadiums across the country at the highest level of sport, and that's bringing that focus back to this district. So if that doesn't class as importance and a need for the district, I imagine obviously within this business they're employing multiple people within the district as well, so I would see that as another point in favour of it. But maybe if the officer could just explain a bit more on this grey belt, because I was very much convinced on the first reading of this that this would tick the box for that, and with this new classification would be, I thought it would be recommended for approval. Thank you.
Good question, and I appreciate this is one of the first grey belt or green belt, grey belt applications that have come forward. The key is in the definition of grey belt set up by the government in the MPPF. So basically, any land, previously developed land or not, the key questions are, does the site in question contribute strongly to purpose A, B or D of the purposes of including land in the green belt? They're set out in paragraph 143, I think it's 143, of the MPPF. So that's unrestricted sprawl of built-up areas, to stop neighbouring towns merging, and to preserve setting and special character of historic towns. So it's not right to say that all previously developed land is by definition grey belt, because the government clearly says that in any event, whatever land you're looking at, you must do that exercise. Does it contribute strongly towards those three purposes? And that's why it's just not automatically grey belt.
If I could come back, Chair, but you are classifying this as grey belt.
Correct. In this case, we are, for the reasons in the report.
Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to come back on as grey belt. I understood that paragraph 154 of the new MPPF will actually, or the definition of grey belt means that any development of previously developed land would amount to less than substantial harm to the openness and is not inappropriate development. So we've established that it's grey belt, but I'm a bit confused about why it is actually going to cause substantial harm to the openness of the green belt, because as far as I can see, these barns are standard size for agricultural use. It's within an already contained area which has got hedging, so there isn't openness there in the first place. And as the speaker said, at the moment they have big piles of soil, which again would be higher than this building. And one thing I think might be considered is that they may not have needed to have it covered in the past, but we do have a change of climate where we get sudden downpours, and that must make a difference to what they're doing. And I have not yet heard any reasons why it is going to actually be harmful to the substantial harm to the openness of the green belt. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. Mary's actually said part of what I was going to say, because the way everything's changing with these terrible storms and that we're getting, I can understand why they would want barns to cover this, to protect it, to keep the soil how they want it to be kept. And all this with grey and, you know, already developed land and everything never makes any sense to me, because I don't think it's very much common sense. So I can't understand why it's refused. I think the barns will enhance the work that they're trying to do, and I just can't understand why we'd be down for refusing. So I will actually be going against the officer on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Adekani.
Basically, based on what it was mentioned, fully support what it was mentioned, the fact that we should promote in the grey area, belt areas where possible, and in this case it does support the fact that it would not input as much basically visual impact on the green belt, and it's, as mentioned, environmentally maybe would help in terms of washing the actual topsoil. So again, there's other reasons that I think I would definitely vote in against this recommendation.
Thank you. Any other members or ward members? Okay, in that case, members, we will move to the vote. The recommendation is to refuse planning permission. All those in favour of refusal, please show.
None, Chairman.
All those against refusal?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Right, so the application has not been refused. I'm looking to members then to see if there is a proposal. Councillor Dadd?
Can I propose that we accept or grant planning permission for this one, please?
Just let's turn to
Yeah. Could I recommend that conditions are delegated to officers if this motion is to go forward?
Yeah. Councillor Matthews?
Oh, well, just to second Councillor Dadd's, and I think we need the wording of it that we accept that this is within grey belt, and we accept that there is the criteria has been met to grant it within the grey belt, and that we will delegate the conditions to the officers.
Okay, so if I just get this right clear, so we're all clear on what we're voting on. We've got a proposal that the planning permission be granted. Alongside that recommendation that alongside that decision the planning permission is granted, we are at the same time delegating the conditions of that planning application. We are dedicating that to officers so that we can ensure that the normal conditions on such an application are put on the granting of the planning permission. That proposal has been proposed by Councillor Dadd and seconded by Councillor Matthews. Could all those in favour of granting planning permission please show?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Planning permission has been granted, and the planning officers we're delegating authority to the planning officers to put on the necessary conditions. Thank you, members. Right, okay, this now takes us to item 8. This is EPF 2072/24, The Forge, Dunmow Road, Fifield. We will be taking items 8 and 9 together. They're both based on the same application, but one is the listed building consent and one is the application itself. So we will take them together. Again, any speakers will have the double time, and we will have separate votes on each item, but the presentation and discussions are so closely linked, we will take those together. So I'm going to hand over to James again. Thank you for his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so the next item is the Old Forge at the northern end of Fifield. The application before members tonight is for the erection of two-storey rear extension. It's before you as the service director and the portfolio holder have decided that it should come to committee for a final decision, and officers are recommending that planning permission and listed building consent are refused. So let's start with the site location. It's located on Fifield Road, which is actually not far away from Embleys Farm that we just looked at. On the site at the moment is a single dwelling, which is Grade 2 listed. And this is a view of the application site in its context. Clearly, the dwelling is an attractive two-storey property that has considerable cohesion with its neighbours in terms of design, scale, use of materials, leading to an attractive street scene. So, firstly, what I want to do is talk about the planning history on this site. So, in February 2022, a 1.5-storey extension was refused due to its harm to the listed building. In June 2024, a single-storey extension was proposed and approved subsequently. Then in October 2024, a two-storey rear extension was refused due to the harm again to the listed building. Today's scheme is essentially the same as the October scheme, bar some minor changes, adding a utility room and a toilet in the kitchen, and reducing the new first floor window from 3 panes to 2, so very materially similar. So with that history in mind, let's look at this proposal, which is to erect this 2-storey projecting gable extension on the listed building. It will be 5.7 metres deep and 5.5 metres wide, so a substantial addition to the listed building. The Conservation Officer has objected, similarly to the previous application, where it would lead to substantial harm to the historic fabric and arrangement of the listed building, and there is no justification or overriding public benefit for coming to that the view that harm is acceptable. This block plan shows the position of the extension and its alteration to the layout of the listed building, leading to almost a flush rear elevation, not quite, but a complete change to the layout and understanding of the listed building. Turning to the other issues, as you've seen in the report, issues such as greenbelt are satisfactory. It's proportionate, it's not disproportionate over and above the original. It also concluded that it doesn't cause any harm to the living conditions of any neighbours. So lastly, this slide just sets out the representations that we've had from the EFTC Conservation Team and the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings, both objecting and in officers' view that the Conservation Officer's reasons are compelling. The overt and irreversible harm caused to the historic fabric of the listed building cannot be justified, and it is therefore recommended that both planning permission and listed building consent are refused for the reasons set out in tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we do have one speaker on this item. That's Tom Hawes, who's in the council chamber. Good evening.
Thank you, Chairman. If it's okay, may I take the first speak? My name is Alistair Allen. I'm the client's agent, and then my client will take over after me to fulfil the 6-minute window that we have.
Absolutely, that's perfect.
My thank you. My thanks. Members, good evening. It's quite some time since I've had the pleasure of addressing the committee. We've all been through quite a lot since then. It's good to be back in front of you again. This proposal, the subject to this application and the previous approval, is sited to the rear of the property against an existing rear wall. This wall, whilst being part of the listed building, is not in itself of any historic merit, as it is essentially a new wall that was constructed after the Second World War. A doodlebug flying bomb landed near the house, and the consequential explosion damaged the forge, requiring the rear wall and the roof to be rebuilt. Our application includes a detailed historic report prepared by Mr. James Ross, whom long-serving members will remember with affection. James was a conservation officer for Essex County Council in the 1980s and went on to work for English Heritage, in which capacity he penned a good deal of the historic buildings advice for the NPPF. We've carried out an exploratory examination of the wall following the approval for that by the Conservation Officer, and have determined that the wall is constructed of 100 by 50mm softwood timbers. Photographs of this exposition are included in our application. James Ross has commented on this exposure in his report and advises that there are no historic fabric in this part of the building. We're very grateful for the approval that we received in 2024, but do on examination find it to be detrimental to the building, as it subdivides the large open space previously occupied by the village forge, the part of the building that has given its name to the dwelling. We've been granted consent to construct a ground floor living space of the same footprint that you're looking at this evening, and to create a principal bedroom on the ground floor by subdividing the part of the building that previously was the village forge. This was at the suggestion of the planning department, and we accepted it as a way forward. However, we really feel that this solution is to the detriment of the building by dividing this purposeful space. Our present solution retains the forge and utilises the previously approved footprint that had a lean-to roof over. Our solution is to create a living space over this previously approved rear addition and to create a bedroom within the roof over. This does obviously create additional bulk, but we're keeping the bulk down by reducing the height of the eaves. The volume of the approved addition was calculated by the planning department as being 19% of the original. I would contest this and suggest that the actual figure is just under 10%. However, The size of this revised proposal before you now, I calculate to be 20%, so very close to what the plan has deemed to be acceptable. We do feel that our proposal creates a cohesive dwelling that will last for future generations, and that we are investing in the longevity of this important Grade 2 listed building by retaining the historic village forge in its present form and its original form as a single open space, rather than dividing this space as suggested by and approved by the planning department. The materials that we will be using will be in the vernacular with clay tiles and smooth finished render and timber windows. Thank you for listening to me, and if I may, I'll pass over to my client, Tom Horse. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
My wife and I and our 2 daughters have lived at the Old Forge for 5 years, and we're trying to ensure that it can be our forever home and suitable for future generations. We're not developers trying to develop a property for personal gain. We're just genuine people who want to be able to remain in our house into old age. We believe, having both grown up in listed properties, that we have to make sure they're functional and practical, and the property is currently not practical to remain living in as we approach our 50s. As you know, we have already had permission to extend over the area in question, so we should not be discussing issues of overdevelopment, as the additional half-storey element represents less than 10% of the CBM of the house. What needs to be considered is whether the existing application will be a more practical way of creating a 4th accessible bedroom and have the least impact to the historic fabric. The existing planning approval, which we have no other option than to implement if we fail today, will result in the main historic room of the house, the vaulted old forge room, being turned into a bedroom. Although this will create a 4th bedroom on the ground floor, it will not solve the accessibility issues, as it will have to be entered through the lowest doorway in the property, and will result, as it includes in the plans an ensuite bathroom within this room, in the destruction of the most historic and beautiful vaulted room in the house. In any reasonable person's view, the revised proposal involving no removal of historic fabric would be the most sympathetic way to create a 4th bedroom. The listed building officer seems to be opposing our application as if our previous one had not been granted, and not taking into account what now will be best for maintaining the historic fabric of the house. Unfortunately, the listed building officer seems to prefer for the most historic room in the Old Forge to be ruined rather than grant this application. Although my wife's undoubted severe need for an accessible 4th bedroom due to her chronic degenerative back condition that has unfortunately developed since we moved to the property is particularly personal to us, I defy anyone to live in this property with 3 extremely low beams which have to be navigated along the corridor to reach the master bedroom, and 2 more very low beams to access the bathrooms, not to develop back issues as I have done now as well. So there is a genuine need. So I really hope the committee will act in a fair and reasonable way and not be governed by one listing building officer who has a different opinion to our arguably far more experienced expert, Mr James Ross, who's over 50 years of dealing with these issues, including as a consultant to Epping Forest, Conservation Officer at Essex County Council and also English Heritage. Even if the councillors do not want to defer to the overwhelming wealth and experience of James Ross, then the views of the 2 listed building experts should cancel each other out, and the councillors should be left to decide on what is reasonable. What is not fair is for the council's listed building officer to act as witness, judge and jury, and for her view to be taken as gospel when opposed by a far more experienced expert who'd carried out a far more extensive investigation of the property. I do not believe that the reasonable person, after inspection of the property and reviewing this application in the light of what has already been granted, would not agree to pass it, given the clear need, the support of Essex's most experienced listed building expert, the complete lack of damage to historic fabric, the lessening of the impact of the historic parts of the house compared to what has already been granted, and it clearly not being overdevelopment, given what has been approved. Thank you for listening this evening, and I really hope you reach a fair and reasonable decision.
Perfect timing for you. Thank you very much indeed. Pause for breath. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay. Right. Members, they are the only speakers on these items. And I'm opening up the application for discussion. Councillor Dadd? Oh, sorry. Have we got a... Right. Sorry.
Madam Chairman,
yes.
I wonder if I might be indulged to allowed to speak on this. Councillor Balcombe contacted me to say he couldn't speak on this because of personal reasons for knowing the applicant, and so I volunteered myself to go there. First thing I'd like to know is, have the committee actually been and visited this premises and done a site visit? Because without that site visit, I find it's going to be extremely difficult for members to grasp the actual layout of this building. It's okay looking at the plans up there, but you do really need to see it to realise the impact of the current planning permissions that have been granted, if they were to be implemented, the damage it would cause to the inside of the actual forge area, not only in its look, appearance and character, but even if you, as most people know, if you put a temporary structure up and then keep the original historic part of the building still in its original form, doesn't matter what you do, you end up getting paint on the beams and it destroys the beams eventually. And it just doesn't look nice. When people have been, if they have been and looked at it, you'll understand the impact that I'm talking about. The forge itself is the main part that needs to be preserved. The back of the building, following the bomb, the doodlebug that went down in the 1940s, took out the rear of the building. And I did note as well that the property is actually sitting 3 foot down from the original sloping field, and it slopes away from the property. I do note the officers have made a comment about this on the impact on the greenbelt, and they make the comment, the greenbelt officer find the comment that the proposal does not represent or appear as disproportionate addition in the greenbelt. So that covers that off. So the 3 main objections that they had, there was the position and potential impact on the historic fabric. Now the historic fabric of the building, when I was there, I was looking, the officer that had attended, the historic buildings officer, had asked for the wall to be opened up so that could be inspected, because they suspected that these were original 1940s timber. When it was opened up, lo and behold, they were the 100mm by 50mm joists. They never had them in the 16th and 17th century. Unfortunately, trees didn't grow that straight. So that sort of, to me, was indicating, well, what is the impact? So then I walked along that bedroom corridor that links it, and I don't think I've ever come across a ceiling joist that's actually in at about 4'10" to 4'11", and you do really have to duck down to get through those gaps. So I can see the problems. You might say, well, if you don't like it, move. This is not someone who wants to move. This is someone who wants to invest time, money, and actually make this a forever home. So I took a view that if I looked at this from the rear of the property, and what has been permitted is this single story with the sloping roof, all that's being asked is that there's an addition that goes on above the existing permitted ground floor development. Now, there might be an impact on the original historic fabric of the building, but that's only going to be where the joists come through and sit on what has been replaced since the doodlebug took it out. So if the committee are minded to go along with the refusal, can I suggest before they do that, they actually go and have a site visit if they have not already done so. This is a beautiful property, been well maintained, and if they carry out and fulfil and build what has been permitted in that forge area, it will destroy the character and the framework of that building forever. Thank you.
Right. Well, I can confirm certainly that members haven't done a site visit. They have not. We have not. There has not been an arranged site visit for members. James, I'm assuming that the planning officers did their own site visits, an in-person site visit on this.
Yeah, my understanding is the conservation officer has been to the site. Yeah.
The conservation officer,
Yeah.
but not one of the planning officers.
I do not believe so.
That's right. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I believe the conservation officer went to the site the first time round, but hasn't been back to see it since the wall was opened up, where it's got the rock wall insulation fitted in the exterior wall, another item that wasn't around in those days, and also the 4x2 joisting, which can now clearly be seen, which is demonstrating that it is a 1940s rear extension build. I'm not saying that the joists that cross the corridor are not original, but the outside wall, which was what the new structures will be attached to, is.
Okay, again, if I can just turn to James to confirm when the conservation officer, was it on the previous application, the visit, or this one?
I don't have that information, I'm afraid. I can't speak to that, unfortunately.
Thank you. Right, okay, we might well be coming back to you, Councillor Bedford, but if we can open up discussion, Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a particular interest in our listed buildings. I've lived in one for over 25 years, and as a child I did, and we're really custodians of our heritage. And if you look at the way we had listed buildings became frequent in the 1970s when there was panic, about what was being pulled down, and they listed just about everything in sight. And my own house, they actually noted the chimney breast. That's actually 1960s. So they did a lot of these things, when they actually mentioned things, weren't quite accurate. But what I want to say is that I've seen it from outside, and I agree a site visit would have been interesting, but I think you have to think about, if you look at the history of some of these properties, for example, Greenstead Hall started off as a small manor house and gradually got built and built, in the Queen Anne mansion, and then you had other additions to it, etc. If you were set in time as a sort of snapshot, we'd still have outside lavatories, we wouldn't have bathrooms, we wouldn't have central heating. And I think that if you look at the MPPF, paragraph 210, it's talking about using it as living for the living purpose. And it says in 2010, in determining applications, local planning authorities should take account of, Part B, the positive contribution that conservation of heritage assets can make to sustainable communities, including their economic vitality. But it's talking about people being able to live in those as they are, rather than as a museum. And I think that's really important. And I think it's also, in the report, it's quite clear that there was a bomb damage, and the fabric around there is not the original going back. And I'm very much, I think that what is proposed here is very tasteful, and I think that the second floor, where the bedroom is proposed, looks in keeping with the slopes of the roof to the one at the front as well. I have not yet heard anything to say that I would want to refuse it. And I think jolly good for somebody who wants to continue living there and make it work for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, I guess this whole hinges around the fact of whether it's going to damage a listed building. But I do notice that, I mean, on the refusal reason it says there is no convincing justification of the harm proposed. Well, firstly, yeah, I'm not in a position to judge whether there's harm, I guess, but I do find the justification convincing. I mean, they want to change the building to make it, you know, practical to live in, and that's something that everybody has to do. So I think I would take, yeah, I would not take this no convincing justification personally as sufficient.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. It's always a difficult one when we're dealing with heritage issues, and obviously none of us here have high qualifications or experience in that, and we have to look at the information that's provided. But we have also got to consider that a lot of it is down to interpretation. These issues are not black and white. They're not, I mean, some would argue even more debatable than green belt, grey belt and all other belts. And I think we're in a position where, as we've seen with the report, obviously we need to appreciate the listing officer who is doing the report for us, but then we've also seen in the planning submission the client's own independent report, which is again another interpretation. So we are tasked with the challenge tonight of one interpretation versus another interpretation, and we almost have to then look at both of them and make an uneducated analysis, because we aren't qualified in each one, but look at it on merit and think about what we actually understand. And I think Councillor Dadd has made a really, really great point. In, as far as I understand, the point of listing a building isn't to just pause it in time, to use the same phrase, put it in a museum. You know, it's to preserve what is there, but ensure that it's still livable and can carry on going forward. If these listed buildings are not given or if the council doesn't give the occupants of these listed buildings the ability to live with some modern comforts and the ability to you know, raise a family within that building, then all of these buildings are going to eventually just fall into disrepair because people are simply not going to choose to live in them, which is going to have a much greater negative impact. So I think it's important to realise how times change. Like, as Councillor Dad said, the progression of indoor lavatories, central heating, we also need to appreciate the world is changing, families are changing. It's very common that you've got older children now living with parents. I know, I can speak sort of personally, my mum and dad had moved out of home and were married and in their own house by the time they were in their early 20s, and both my sister and I were still at home long after that, and I know a lot of friends of mine that are still mid-30s and are living with their parents. So the times have changed, and we need to appreciate that. And while it might not necessarily be a planning consideration, I think it is a consideration to have that we don't want these buildings to put so many restrictions on these buildings that they don't become livable for a modern family. And I think that's the point I'd like to make on, and I will struggle, unless I hear anything else compelling in this debate, I will struggle to agree with the officer's recommendation on this one, because I think, as I said earlier, we are looking at one opinion versus another opinion, and I will then go in the middle of that and think what's going to be best for the longevity of this building. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Just to support the argument that was brought forward, I work on many retained facade English heritage projects in central London, Regent Street. So we need to move with time. And the sections, part of the heritage that we need to maintain, we need to maintain. But if you want to keep them as they are, you, in effect, in the commercial part of the sort of city, you're effectively closing down everything. So again, I'm not saying it's fully comparable, but in a smaller scale, we need to look at what we're retaining. Obviously, we want to retain, but if you don't support this, you may not be even using it as a house. So I would definitely vote against this recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I've lost count of the number of buildings that I've been into, and I've been told, oh, parts of this building date from. So it is clear over the centuries, buildings have been added to, extended and changed. And yes, I'm all for preserving the buildings, but I share the views of Councillor Dad and Councillor Matthews. We've got to have them so that they can be lived in can be lived in today. If they are not adapted, as Councillor Matthews has said, we can get to the situation when nobody would want to live in them and they would fall into decay. So I would have to say that, no disrespect to the planning officers, but I would not be agreeable to refusing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So the only question I've got is, are we going to end up with a situation, because I'm following along with everyone's comments on this, and I've had a few cases like this in the past in my old career, and I feel we'd be quite vulnerable if the site was opened up in front of an inspector and they found that it was all engineered timbers. The one question I've got just for officers is, if we were so minded to grant this application, there is an existing planning consent as well. So one thing, do we need to just consider quantum just carefully? Have you've granted consent for an alternative part of the building to be converted, correct?
Yeah, single story extension has been approved, yeah.
So the question I've got for you is, on balance, if we were minded to grant this consent, there is also another consent that is existing that could be implemented.
Correct, yes.
Right. Sorry, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. So the consent they've got for the ground floor will stay exactly the same as it is, maybe the foundation's deeper, and just basically built up and built into the top. But it doesn't show very clear with what's there, just a couple of drawings. So I can't see why we would refuse it. other than saying, right, yes, you've got to maybe do deeper foundations. And of course, we don't want to ruin the place. And the place is a very nice looking place. And putting that on it, I don't think is actually going to spoil it. As everyone has said, it is going to make it livable. I mean, I lived in a place, because I'm quite old, that our toilet was down the yard. So it is quite important to have proper facilities in the house. So I will not be supporting refusing.
I wonder if the planning officer could just reiterate and just clarify for members exactly what has been allowed and how this current application sits alongside that.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the two-storey extension is on the same footprint as the single-storey extension, but two-storey.
Okay. Councillor Bedford. And then I'll come
I think the important part, perhaps the committee are not picking up, is yes, the ground floor rear extension is permitted. What is also permitted is the construction of the bedroom in the forge,
yes,
which is there. The owners do not want to do that because that will destroy the forge, which is the whole reason why they just want to do this bit on the top to create this additional bedroom, a separate staircase that will go up to the half landing and then go through the wall of the old 1940s construction and then go up into the new area. Nothing on that outside flank would be affected, as far as I'm aware. Officers can actually confirm that if they look at it. It may abut to some original joisting, but it's not going to damage it.
No.
And with historic buildings, you can carry out alterations and works to them to enable them to carry on their useful life, which is what is trying to happen here. They just do not want to damage the original fabric in the forge, because once you construct that internal bedroom area there, yes, it reduces the size of the lounge, but it will have an impact, no matter how good you do it. And who wants to build a box in a forge and then put a little roof on it so that it looks like it's not attached to anything?
No, I think the applicant actually made it quite clear in his presentation that he didn't want to do that work in the forge. So I think that was quite clear in the applicant's presentation. Councillor, I did say I'd come back to Councillor Matthews, actually.
Well, it's on this. Yes, we had picked up about the damage that could be done to the forge, and what we were going to, what Councillor Matthews and I have just discussed, is whether if this is approved, then whether we could actually ask for the previous one, not as a condition, not to actually damage the original forge on the ground floor.
I would recommend against that because, and the reason I say that is can this planning application and listed building consent stand on its own, or is it a requirement that we prevent a previous application from being carried out? And what members seem to be saying is that it can stand without that, and I wouldn't say it was reasonable to stop or to not allow the, because technically it's like a choice, isn't it? They can do the single story or they can do the two story, and it's not reasonable to restrict one in favour of the other if both are compliant in members' view.
Okay. Right, members, any other comments before we take a vote? Councillor Matthews.
I'm just trying to get my head around that last one, because what I don't, obviously the previous application has been approved. What I wouldn't like to see is something that's, obviously it's been approved, but we don't want to see something that can potentially cause damage that could also be implemented. So what I wouldn't want to see, if this application was approved and then both were carried out, because surely that would undermine what we've said. But I appreciate what you're saying is we've approved that one previously, so we're saying that stands on its own merit. So we can't now say, take that one away. Is that correct, Alma?
Yeah, and they couldn't implement both, is the key point. It's one or the other. Yeah.
Okay, members, in that case, we will take this to the vote. The officer recommendation is to refuse planning permission. At this point, we are just looking at item 8, so we're looking at the planning permission. Officer recommendation is to refuse planning permission. All those in favour of refusing, please show.
None, Chairman.
All those against refusing, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
So, members, we are in a similar situation. We've voted against refusal. I'm looking therefore to a proposal. I can see Councillor Dadd at the ready. So, Councillor Dadd.
Yes, I propose that we recommend that this is approved in accordance with the plans that are there now and subject to any conditions that the planning officer would like to add to it. Thank you.
We're learning. Okay, so we therefore have a proposal from Councillor Dadd. The planning permission is granted and deferring the conditions to planning officers. Have I got somebody prepared to second that, please? Seconded by, I think Councillor Amos actually picked the post there. So, seconded by Councillor Amos. Members, all those in favour of granting the planning permission, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Lovely. In that case, members, planning permission has been granted. We then move to the vote on item 9. And we have to first vote on the planning officer, which is on the planning officer's recommendation, which is to refuse planning permission. All those in favour of refusal, please show.
None, Chairman.
Those against refusal?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So, members, we've voted against refusal. So, I'm looking to any proposals. Councillor Dadd, thank you.
Thank you. I propose that we grant permission and again defer or leave the conditions to the planning department. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just clarifying there the proposal. It is to grant listed building consent. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. I'm just clarifying for so it is. So if I've got someone who is able to second that, please. Councillor Amos. Members, all those in favour of granting the listed building approval, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Okay. In that case, listed building approval is also granted. Thank you. Right, members, thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening. Right, members, moving on, we are now going to be looking at items 12 and 13. These are two associated applications. They are EPF/1888/24 at Middlebrook Farm, Hoe Lane, Nasing. And item 13 is EPF/1889/24 at Willowbrook Green Lane, Nasing. I'm going to hand straight over to, I think it's Mohammed taking this on Teams. Good evening, Mohammed. I think I'm passing this straight over to you for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair, members and everyone. Just Chair, I was going to present all 4 items together and then when it comes to the vote, that's when officers recommending members vote on the 24 application first. If that's okay, I'll just run through all 4 together.
I actually thought we were taking the 223 items together and the 224 items together. I thought by taking all 4, can I turn to James and Amanda? I thought by taking all 4 it was going to be difficult.
He's put the presentation of 2 different applications together to show the differences between the 2 and then link it together.
Ah, right. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Mohammed. I misunderstood you. Okay, yes. As long as we're taking the, as long as the discussions are fairly explicit as to which one Yes, I can see what you're doing. Thank you. Sorry, my misunderstanding.
No worries, Chair. Right, items 10 to 13 will be presented together as they all relate to Middlebrook Farm and Willowbrook in Nazin. Items 10 and 11 are dependent on each other and will be tied together in a single Section 106 legal agreement, and the same with items 12 and 13. From here on, items 10 and 11 will be referred to as the 23 applications, and items 12 and 13 referred to as the 24 applications. Now, both the 23 and 24 applications are outline applications with all matters reserved except for access. So for clarity, members are only considering the principle of the development, the access and other material considerations as outlined in the agenda. Matters relating to scale, appearance of the buildings, layout and landscaping are to be fully assessed via our future reserved matters applications. And part of the sites for both applications contain existing allocated employment sites in the adopted local plan, as will be shown on the slides shortly, and only the Middlebrook site is within the green belt. Now turning to the slides. So here we have the location plan for both Middlebrook and Willowbrook. So we have Middlebrook over here, and you have the Willowbrook site over here. Here's the wider context of the employment allocations. So we have Willowbrook over here. The blue hatch line represents the employment allocation. And here's Middlebrook over here. Here's a closer view. So Middlebrook employment allocation over here. And Willowbrook over here. Here's an aerial view of Middlebrook over here, and Willowbrook over here. So these are the original 23 applications presented to West Committee back in June. So you have the Middlebrook site, which proposed 16 residential units over here, and the Willowbrook site, which proposed 6 affordable houses over here, and the commercial units over here. So the 23 applications has a mix of commercial and residential development, as shown here. Here are the 24 applications, the revised scheme. So Middlebrook, you have a fully commercial scheme over here. So the pink is the existing commercial buildings, and the yellow, the new commercial units. And on the Willowbrook side, you have 21 residential units. So this is a fully residential scheme, whereas the 23 application was a mix of commercial and residential. So that's the key difference here. So here are the Middlebrook indicative layout side by side. So the 23 application over here, which had 16 residential units, and the 24 Middlebrook scheme, which is for purely commercial units. Here are the Willowbrook indicative layouts, again side by side. So you have the 23 scheme over here, 6 affordable houses and commercial units over here, and the 24 scheme is purely for residential, so 21 units. So the full merits of the case are set out within the agenda, and I will just summarize the cases. So both the 23 and 24 applications are policy compliant schemes as set out in the agenda, and they will deliver commercial units, residential units, including affordable housing, highway improvements, along with approximately 650,000 towards infrastructure such as education, health services, community facilities, and open space. For both sites, concerns have been raised around the access, including further disturbance from the construction phase, given that other developments are currently being constructed on the Middlebrook site. While this is not ideal for residents, the construction phase is temporary and it's not a valid or defendable reason to refuse an application. Otherwise, it means nothing can be built in the country. With regards to the intensification of the Middlebrook site and the Willowbrook site from both developments, this has been reviewed by the highways team and found to not be harmful to the safety operation of the highway network. As such, there are no defendable grounds to refuse on highway safety grounds, and without the support of the highways team for the refusal, the council would be liable to a cost of bill. Nonetheless, subject to detailed assessment at the reserve matter stage, the proposals, both the 23 and the 24, would safeguard the living conditions of neighbouring amenities, provide a good level of accommodation for future users, and meet the needs of modern businesses. There would be benefits from the construction and occupation of the homes and the commercial units. Overall, the proposals are in line with the visions and objectives of the adopted local plan, one of which is to provide new homes within the district to meet the needs of existing and future generations, and also support economic growth within the district. For these reasons, officer recommendation is to grant outline planning permission subject to conditions and a completed section 106 legal agreement for all the applications. Just for members' benefit, and Chair, I did have this slide up, so yeah, as you alluded to in the beginning, if the 24 applications, which are items 12 and 13, are discussed and voted on first, as they have parish and resident support, thereafter the 23 applications, which, although policy compliant, have no support. Thank you, Chair. That's the end. I'll leave this slide up.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed. Right, okay, so I think, members, if we look at the speakers list, we'll take the speakers for items 12 and 13 first. So we will, in a minute, I'll ask Stacey Preston to start off as an objector to item 12, and then Phil Beavers as an objector to item 13, and then the Councillor David Jocelyn and the applicant's agent, they will both have 6 minutes and they will speak on the two applications together. Are you happy with that? Is that all right? Okay, so if I could welcome Stacey Preston, and you have your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, councillors. I'm a resident at Winston Farm, which is the access road for Middlebrook. The access road at Winston Farm that Middlebrook currently uses is a single car width lane at the narrowest part. There's nowhere to pull over if another vehicle approaches. The road itself is in extremely poor condition because of extensive utility works over the past year and the volume of traffic driving along it. Not a single repair has been made to that road in the 4 years I've lived there. I noted that there aren't any improvements proposed for this road within the application. No street lighting, no repairs to the bridge over Nasing Brook, no lay-bys. There is, however, a walkway for pedestrians that doesn't even extend the length of the road, and it doesn't join up with a pavement on Hoe Lane, as there isn't one. So pedestrians are then expected to walk in the road with all the traffic or on the verges that have been destroyed by HGVs driving over them. The proposed walkway will also further restrict a narrow access road that is already problematic to pass through. Hoe Lane 2 has numerous problems, but essentially there are too many vehicles using the lane. And where it narrows, we face issues with HGVs getting stuck alongside each other. At peak times, it can take up to 30 minutes to exit Hoe Lane. The number of accidents on the lane has also increased in the past 18 months. I personally witnessed 3 in one day involving multiple vehicles, including commercial ones. There is a problem with HGVs parking up outside the units overnight. Tenants tell drivers to park there. The drivers turn their engines on throughout the night to warm their cabs. No consideration is given as to whether this will disrupt neighbours. Which leads me on to the operating hours proposed. They are longer than currently allowed at the units. Residents don't want deliveries being made 7 days a week. Not that the operating hours matter anyway, because the units do what they like and often have deliveries late into the evening, unloading with forklifts yards from my home. They also block driveways, residents' gates and discard litter all over the road. I ask you to consider, is Winston Farm a commercial road or a residential one? You've approved 20 new homes on the site over the last 9 years, removing most of the commercial. If we are seeking to reduce the number of HGVs on a private road by building houses, why are we now considering a proposal for more commercial units at Middlebrook? Housing was built at Stony Shop Farm to reduce the burden of HGVs on Hoe Lane, which is already struggling. Neither Hoe Lane nor Winston Farm can cope with additional commercial traffics generated by the new units, not in their present condition. You must invest in suitable infrastructure. Hoe Lane needs widening. It needs street lighting, a pavement, clearing of overgrown trees and a reduction in the speed limit if you expect pedestrians to be able to safely walk or cycle along it to the units or to their homes. I appreciate that Hoe Lane was at a time commercial. However, things have changed. Housing is being built and you must look at the road before you agree to build more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. If I could now call on Phil Beavis, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, my name is Phil Beavis, and I'm a current resident of Green Lane and have been for over 30 years now. My property sits directly opposite the current Willowbrook building that's there. And when this first came up for approval, I actually spoke last year to object to the commercial development and the industrial units. There were 6 main primary reasons that we wanted to object as a community. One, we felt that the change of use, we hadn't been consulted generally, all of the local residents, nobody had been consulted over the change of use for the whole site. Flood risk is a massive problem, and this could result in our properties being uninsurable in the future. There's a massive traffic impact insofar as it's a very narrow road also in Green Lane. It's a very tight corner coming into Green Lane. We're talking about 400 to 600 potential vehicle movements every day. There will be associated pollution that would go with this, parking issues, any overspill from the development would undoubtedly end up in Green Lane, so again cause massive issues. But by far and away, for me personally, the biggest issue that I had with the commercial proposal is that being right opposite the main entry and exit point, this would mean that I would have headlights from lorries, delivery vehicles and so on shining right into the front of my property all hours of the day and night, which is really, in my view, an egregious invasion of privacy that should not be allowed. So these are the reasons that we want to push back on the commercial development. We do, as a community, like the idea very much and are all aligned around having a residential solution, which is the latter proposal that's been put forward, because this obviously brings new housing for the area, which is much needed. But I would make a request from me personally that any outline planning that's granted for this, even the residential solution, should be contingent on moving that access point away from being directly opposite my property. Even with 21 houses, that is a lot of vehicles that are potentially going to be on that site. And again, I don't want the sort of invasion of privacy that would provide. Now, there is an alternative space which is right near the entrance to Green Lane, or further towards the entrance to Green Lane, which would be far more suitable. It's not opposite anybody's property, and it would be the ideal solution. It also doesn't really impact on the existing plan to any great extent. This could be easily accommodated, and that's the solution that I would personally like to put forward to the committee for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Now if I could call upon Councillor David Jocelyn on Teams, I think. Good evening, Councillor.
Good evening. My name's David Jocelyn and I'm Chairman of the Planning Committee of Amazing Parish Council. There are 4 applications before the committee this evening, namely item 10, and I know we're not dealing with that at the minute, but I need to cover this. Item 10, EPS 075123, was for 16 family homes at Middlebrook with no affordable houses and no commercial work. That was item 10. Item 11 related to Willowbrook, and that was 075223, and that was for 22 commercial units with 6 affordable homes at Willowbrook. Then we can move now to item 12, which is one of the ones that is more current, and that item 12 relates to Middlebrook, EPF 18824, and that's for 15 commercial units with no residential accommodation at all. And then item 13 is Willowbrook, EPF 1888924, 21 family houses. The 2023 applications were considered at a meeting of Epping Parish Council, which was attended by a large number of fairly vociferous residents, particularly those people who lived in the Willowbrook area, who were concerned about the proposed commercial development. The comments of Epping Parish Council are on the report relating to the both applications. At page 34 are those comments relating to Middlebrook, and at page 53 those comments relating to Willowbrook. And they set out the position as was seen by Epping Parish Council following that meeting. And representatives of the applicants were also present and were clearly concerned to avoid difficulties with the local residents. We now can deal with item 12, Middlebrook. This is now restricted to 15 new commercial units, no residential. The changes to both applications, I'll come back to that, because item 13 relates to Willowbrook, where now it is proposed 21 family houses, no commercial development at all. And if we can consider page 73 in the reports, that actually sets out the changes to Middlebrook, which explain that there's an additional number of commercial units and no residential. At page 92, the Willowbrook, the revisions to the Willowbrook plans are pointed out, the main change being the development of the site with 21 residential dwellings and the relocation of the projected employment floor place to Middlebrook. So all the commercial development was going to Middlebrook, and Willowbrook remains residential. Bearing in mind that Willowbrook, that the area around there is pretty well totally residential, and it's approached through residential, through a road with houses on both sides. It is clearly beneficial to the residents for Willowbrook to be restricted to residential use. And it's evident that the applicants took on board the complaints by the residents actually in both areas. And may I respectfully remind you that as a tier of local government closest to their communities, town and parish councils are well placed to know where and how development should be permitted. The Parish Council of Nasing is intent on protecting the interests of local residents and, so far as possible, preserving the village for future generations. So for that reason, the Parish Council supports these two 2024 applications, but would never have supported the previous ones, as is evident from the comments in the reports.
Thank you, Councillor Jocelyn.
Accordingly, I trust you will agree with the decisions of the Parish Council.
You do need to wind up now, Councillor Jocelyn. Thank you.
Approve them and grant consents. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, our final speaker on these two items is Matthew Corcoran. Sorry, Corey. Sorry? Yes, I think that's on item 10. You're ready to speak on item 10. We're looking at items 12 and 13 at the moment. No, it's no problem at all. Okay, sorry. No, we're sort of juggling all four items at the time, but no, at the moment I'm just focusing on the speakers for items 12 and 13, and following this discussion, we'll then open discussion, and prior to that, you'll speak on item 10. Okay, thank you. All right, so, sorry, Matthew, thank you.
Chair, if I may, just before I start, there's a little bit of cross-fertilisation between the number of... So just wanted to make everyone particularly clear that this discussion at the moment is for items 12 and 13, which were the two revised planning submissions submitted back in of last year. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, good evening, members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to address you all this evening. My name is Matthew Corcoran, speaking on behalf of the applicant, LW Developments. The applications are made by a local SME developer who has, as you're probably all aware, has been working very closely with the council and local community for many a year. We have worked positively with your officers, statutory consultees, stakeholders throughout the process, and we thank your officers for their diligence and for preparing a comprehensive and positive report. The proposals are for locally led consensual development, seeking outline planning permission on 2 linked sites for 15 new commercial units at Middlebrook and 21 new family homes at Willowbrook. The applications are in outline form, seeking permission for the principle of development only and the means of access. The design and layouts will require further discussion with officers and future reserved matters submissions. These sites are both allocated for development in your local plan and will deliver a suite of public benefits for your constituents. We have worked very closely and positively with the parish, who, as we've heard from Mr. David Jocelyn, we now have full support, and that is referenced on page 93 and page 75 in the committee reports. Both sites are linked by a binding Section 106 agreement to deliver significant local investment, and this includes market and new affordable homes at Willowbrook, high quality, exciting new economic floor space at Middlebrook, a policy compliant level of financial contributions, circa nearer £700,000, towards local schools, health services, open spaces, libraries and community facilities. There are no objections from statutory consultees, and the application has generated overwhelming support, particularly at the Willowbrook site, where the Green Lane residents are overwhelmingly in support of these proposals. The proposals will see the delivery of infrastructure improvements first. By way of an example to this, conditions are attached which require the existing access road at Middlebrook to be upgraded, which the applicants are fully in control of. Just to make a couple of quick points on the comments we've heard. The topic of vehicles using the new commercial units. There's a planning condition number 17 which restricts vehicles and services. We don't anticipate there to be any HGV requirements for the 15 new commercial units, and they will be serviced by small vans. And to reiterate that both sites are allocated for development in the local plan, and we are seeking simply to deliver that. Members, we've only heard earlier this morning the government's speeches and plans for ambitious growth and to deliver a positive economic outlook for the UK. We would politely suggest to members if we can embrace this positivity in the local community, in the local economy, and to deliver new opportunities for your constituents by supporting your officers and indeed your local plan. Chair, members of the committee, these applications are supported by the parish and unlock important new housing and job creation on allocated sites which are very desperately needed. We therefore ask you please, on behalf of the applicants, to support your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, members, I think we should open. Yes. No, thank you. I've just been reminded there is a ward member here, and I was actually, of course, going to turn to Councillor Whitbread as ward member. Before I do, just remind members that we are at the moment discussing specifically items 12 and 13. Councillor Whitbread as ward member first.
Thank you, Chairman. And as you know, I sit here as one of 3 ward members, and I know if my colleagues were here this evening, they would take a very similar view to myself. Having sat through Plans West back in 2023, when we last looked at this application, I think the applications for 24 highlight the good work that's been done between our officers and the applicant in trying to find a way forward on these local plan sites. And I think we have to recognise that they are local plan sites, and therefore they are identified for development in future years. I always like the idea that residents are listened to and that parish councils are listened to, because particularly at this time it's important they have their voice. And we heard it very clearly at Plans West that the nature of these sites could be achieved, but not in the way they first came forward. And it pays tribute to the agility shown by our officers and the applicant that that's been achieved. You'll never have it perfect. That's the hardest thing whenever you look at these applications. There's always something, there's a slight balance, whether it's the access to the site or whether it's other issues that are outside of the site's control, as we heard with some of the issues around Hoe Lane. But it's a good reminder to us all that there are issues that need to be addressed. And again, we are raising those all the time from an Essex Highways point of view. But I do recognise the challenges around Hoe Lane in particular and its changing nature. So I think that's very important. But this evening, I would ask your committee to support the applications for 24. I believe they find the right balance for residents and for the parish council and a way forward, and is the best solution for those 2 sites that we currently have. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I support what Councillor Whitbread has said. I think that there's been a lot of work going on between the items in 2023 and 2024, and thank the residents and parish council for their representations today. And there are 2 issues with, well, same issue with both those sites, and that makes it difficult for us, and that is that they are both private roads. And although we're looking at access today as well, I hope that we can actually have something in the conditions that is strong enough to make sure that they negotiate well with the owner of the private roads to look out for some of the issues. For example, in item 12, I'll look at item 12 first. Yes, it's a narrow road, but obviously with the access, there perhaps needs to be negotiations about whether there are any lay-by parking places for the future. Excuse me. And I do want to point a couple of things out because it is essentially a commercial area, and as far as I can see, they're keeping the existing B2 and B12 storage and general industry sites, and what they're proposing would appear to be user class EG, which is office, research and development, including and those can be things that can be carried out in a residential area, and those will be the ones that are probably closest to the existing residential area. They are smaller units, and as the developer's agent said, they'll be mostly serviced by vans. What I'm actually wondering is whether we could have, or they could have, a stronger buffer between the residential area to the north of where the existing western site is, because at the moment it looks as though there's not much in the way of hedging, and a buffer zone would actually help with the noise aspects. So in condition 4, I think, there is, if I try and find it, I'm wondering whether it says prior to commencement, the development hereby approve a habitat and management monitoring plan, etc. And I'm wondering if that's where increasing the buffer area could go, so that there's a proper buffer border between the site to strengthen that. At the moment, it looks as though there's only a fence. Secondly,
Councillor Dad, can I just pause? I just wonder if it would be a good idea to get Mohammed in to comment on that before we...
Oh, yes, sure. I've got several points, if that's
I
all
can
right.
see that. I'm just wondering, rather than doing... Yeah, if we could ask Mohammed to comment on that part, and then I'll come straight back to you.
Sure, Chair. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, landscaping is a reserved matter. So, when the reserve, should consent be granted tonight, when the reserved matters application comes in, we'll look at the detailed landscaping at that stage. So, it can't be done by condition now because it's a reserved matter covered by condition 2.
You can't change the conditions now, did you say?
No, landscaping, the landscaping details are to be assessed at the reserved matters application.
It's the fact that it's a reserved matters.
Buffer is a reserved matter.
The landscaping. Okay, so that's your first point, and if I could come back to you now. Thank you.
Thank you. The second point is condition 21, I think. Oh, if I go through in order, sorry. Condition number 3, I'm a bit confused about the approved plans, PL01, PL02, because there seems to be duplication when I downloaded stuff about what they are. There seems to be, I've got some, for example, I've got a PL04 which refers to Millbrook, and also a PL04 that refers to Willowbrook. So I'm wondering if those PLO references could be double-checked to make sure that they are relevant.
Mohammed, do you just want to comment quickly?
So for both the Middlebrook site, the plan numbers state PL01 because those plans have been submitted with the Middlebrook application, hence why they're referenced for the item. And for the Willowbrook site, again, it has the same reference. But you can tell the distinction because those plans would have been submitted with the Willowbrook application. So although they have the same reference, when you open them up, they are different plans.
But they can be double-checked because I got an 03 and an 04.
03 and 04 are so as it's an outline consent, we can't condition any indicative plans or illustrative plans, which are 03 and 04. So the plans that you've seen that state proposed site plan or proposed sections, we can't condition them because they're only illustrative or indicative. Hence why they're not referenced in the condition, plan number condition.
Oh, okay. Lovely, thank you.
Can I just also confirm on condition 21 that it is only to be used for B2, B8 and Class EG? So the new ones look to me as though they're user class EG, and will that be stipulated? It looks to me as though user class B2 and B8 are the existing. Because I think that would make a material difference to the amount of traffic and the type of traffic if they were interchangeable.
Can you come back to us on that, Mohammed?
I'm just putting up the conditions.
Thank you.
So it's for item, are we looking at item 12, Councillor Deb?
We're looking at condition 21 on page 88, and it is PL04. PL04 shows that the yellow ones, which are the proposed ones, rather than the existing, and from the size of them, I would assume that they are E Part G, and I would say that it would be important to make sure that that isn't interchangeable to be B2 and B8, because that would make a difference to the type of vehicles that could disrupt this area, which has also got residential.
Right, so in terms of condition 21, those are the proposed uses put forward. It's open to members to, if they wish to further restrict it to Class EG. But condition 17 does set out a service management plan to be submitted at the condition stage, and as the applicant's agent has alluded to, the site would be serviced by small vans. So we do have a condition ensuring that there are no HGVs accessing the site via condition 17. But regardless if it's B2 or B8, there wouldn't be any heavy-duty vehicles accessing the site.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Very quickly, and then I think we need some other members to have.
On Willowbrook, item 13, my main concern here is a flood zone for residential. And although the flood agency are quite happy about that, I'm wondering again whether you can strengthen a condition, because at the moment the condition number 34 no, it's not number 34. It's, I'm sorry, I can't find it, but it
I think are you looking at page 109, condition 34? Pardon? Are you looking at condition 34 on item 13?
Oh, yes, I was looking at number 13 to do with Willowbrook, because it does talk about the SUDs, and it recommends that the houses are flood protected, and I think it should be stronger than recommending. I think it should be a condition that they must be flood protected. I can't find the actual number at the moment. And again, about the private road, I know it's a civil matter, it's a private road, but again, I would ask whether it's possible for, even if we approve this, whether the resident who is going to be opposite this site, whether there could be, the developers would be willing to look at changing the site entrance slightly, because they haven't actually agreed the layout yet.
Okay. I don't know that there's any, Mohammed, is there anything you want to say specifically on those 2 points?
Yeah, so I think so 34 is not a condition, it's informative, just highlighting to the applicant that, when the reserve matters comes in and they're looking at the scale and design of the buildings, that they consider some of those mitigation measures, such as having the electric socket at a high level, raised thresholds and elevated air bricks. So that's an informative. And in terms of the second point, so what members have determined tonight is the proposal before them, including the access. So that's what a decision has to be made on tonight. So the proposed access before members, which has been found sound by the highways team.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Amos, I think.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have to say that with the questions from Councillor Dadd and the responses from Mr Rahman, the points I was going to raise have been dealt with. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Matthews.
Chair, I just want to ask a question on how we're doing this and the order of this. I'm conscious we've got a member of the public who wishes to speak on item 10, or is allocated to speak on item 10. Obviously, if we're discussing item 12 and 13 at the moment, if we then vote on item 12 and 13, it's going to have a material effect on 10 and 11. So I'm conscious I don't want to have a situation where a member of the public's voice isn't being heard fully, because obviously that, if we make the decision here before we've heard that person's contribution, I'm just wondering if we actually need to hear that. As we've had the report, we've looked at all four, and I know we're now focusing on 12 and 13. I wonder, for the quality of the debate, whether that would be better potentially if the member of the public was to speak now while we're looking at all of this. Because I don't want, as I say, I don't want to be in a situation if this gets approved or not, it's going to have a material effect on the next one and may negate the need for the next application, if that makes sense.
I can take on board exactly where you're coming from on that. I think if we were to do that, the only option would be to hear all the speakers on item 10 and 11. So effectively put the discussion on items 12 and 13 on pause, hear the speakers on items 10 and 11, and then return to the discussions on 12 and 13 and then discuss 10 and 11. I don't think...
Personally, I think that would be a really good idea. Yeah, 100% needs to be transparent. It needs to be equal and fair opportunity for both sides to comment. But I do think that would be the proper way of proceeding.
Can I just turn to Planning Officer Manager, who's in the chamber, and indeed our legal advice. If I can just turn to see if there's any problem with that. Okay. I would just like to turn to the speakers very quickly. The speakers involved on 10 and 11 were suggesting that perhaps we pause the discussion on items 12 and 13, hear all the speakers on items 10 and 11, and then return to discussion. Are you happy with that? Yep, lovely. Okay, members, taking on board what Councillor Matthews has said, I think it would be useful and fair to hear the speakers now. So we're going to pause, with members' agreement. I'd like to pause the discussion on items 12 and 13, hear the speakers on items 10 and 11, and then return to the discussions, and then make the four, and then we'll do the votes all sort of one after the other. Okay, members happy with that? Right, in that case, members, we're turning our attention briefly onto items 10 and 11 speakers. We've got Mr. Kim Patience, who is speaking as an objector on item 10, who will have 3 minutes. Phil Beavis, who is speaking as an objector on item 11, and then so we'll also have 3 minutes. And we then have Councillor David Jocelyn again and Matthew Korakan, who will obviously have 6 minutes on the combined applications. Okay, so Good evening, Mr. Good evening, Mr. Patience. If you'd like your 3 minutes now, thank you very much indeed.
First of all, we weren't informed of the 15 commercial units. We didn't know anything about it. I've got this came through the post 2 days ago telling me about the 16 houses. We didn't know anything about it. Nothing had come to us. The reason I came here tonight is to object to the 16 houses because the service road, the access road, can't take any more traffic at all. It's absolutely murderous. It's falling to bits. My house is being systematically destroyed by the commercial stuff that's up there already. We're getting HGV lorries that are just driving over my garden. They've destroyed my the entrance to my garage. It's incredibly dangerous. I can't even get out of my own driveway. I have to use another driveway to try and get out. The houses that have been built up there cannot be sold because of the commercial units up there. Nobody wants to buy them. So 6 houses are sitting there with not one single offer on any of them. I built 2 houses, one dream house to live in and one to sell to somebody else that they want to live in. We've built a community there and there should be no more commercial there. It just can't take it, and we don't want it. You know, when I bought the land and I built the 2 houses, it was said by the council that it's going to be residential and a beautiful spot for everybody to live in. If you put commercial in there, it will destroy. It'll destroy my house physically. My house shakes. I've got lorry drivers sitting there because they can't pass each other, and they're looking into my lounge and into my kitchen. I mean, all the foundations of my house are shaking. Well, you know, I keep on trying to make it nice, you know, by the side of the fencing. My fencing's been knocked down twice. It's just not for commercial use. You may put a few more houses at the top, maybe, but you're just destroying everything. You know, we're trying to create something beautiful. Everybody spent loads of money and trying to live in a little dream, and you're going to wipe it out with commercial lorries. Somebody's going to get killed up there. It's absolutely just lethal. It shouldn't be commercial up there. Why did you turn around and allow people to build houses and then you're turning around and allowing commercial? It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting what you've done. You've given everybody what they thought was going to be residential, and now you're going against your own plan. What you've done is absolutely just disgusting. And also the bridge at the bottom, that won't take any more lorries. It's collapsing. Who the hell is going to pay for the bridge at the bottom of the access road? It's crumbling already. It's going to fall into the brook. You know, you've taken away our dream by trying to put commercial up there. Put a few beautiful houses up there. You know, you went for 16, pure greed. Go for 3 or 4 big ones if you've got to do that. But you've absolutely wiped out the people that, you know, trusted you to be allowed to build 6 houses. You've betrayed their trust. They can't sell those houses now with a commercial, let alone when you put another 15 units up there. You're going to destroy that whole site. It could have been a beautiful, beautiful part of Nazing, and it could have been spectacular up there where people really wanted to live. And you've absolutely destroyed it, or going to destroy it, by allowing commercial. I mean, you destroyed my house by allowing all those lorries to go by. So there's no control over it. It's all very well saying, oh, there'll be vans. There won't be vans. They're talking about massive lorry park up there. You know, I thought you wanted to make something nice out of Nazing. And when I came from Cuffley, and everybody slagged me off for going to Nazing, I mean, why don't you just create, you know, we've created 4 beautiful barns, 2 beautiful houses. Why don't you allow us to live nicely? Putting lorries up there.
Thank you. I think you've put your opinion across very well, and thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Our next speaker on item 11 is an objector, Phil Beavis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little confused, really, in terms of what this section is to discuss. I think in the first 3 minutes that I had, I put most of the rationale and the objections of having commercial development in the Willowbrook site. One thing I would like to say is that in line with what the parish council were talking about, I think the communications with the developer, LW Developments, has been very good up until now. You know, they've listened to a lot of the arguments and concerns that we have put forward. I think the latest proposal for 2024 that has been put forward, I think addresses pretty much most of our concerns, with the obvious exception of the entry and exit point. So again, I'm hoping that as a result of this particular session, we can just continue the dialogue with LW Developments to get that looked at, because there is a very elegant way around this, which would be good news for everybody involved. You know, I live in Green Lane. I pass this particular alternative access point every day. So, you know, I know it can be done, and, you know, I'd welcome the opportunity to have those discussions subsequently after this session is finished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, as you say, obviously the applicants are here, and I am sure they're listening. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we now turn to Councillor David Justin from Nazing Parish Council online.
Oh, good evening again. I have very little to add to my previous discourse. Say that, just to underline, the Parish Council consider that Willowbrook is not the place for commercial development, which actually agrees with the objector who was last speaking. The Council's reasons for that are set out in the report on Willowbrook under item 11 at page 53. I won't waste your time, Madam Chairman. The reasons for the Parish Council's objection to the development are set out pretty clearly, and in particular it states the proposed commercial use is not considered to be acceptable in this location, which is a residential location, and the approaches to it are through residential areas. I confirm that the Parish Council would support a strenuous objection to this particular application, but on the other hand, as I've already said, the subsequent applications are supported by the Parish Council, and I would like to see them go through. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, back to Matthew Corcoran. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, could I just clarify, this discussion now is items 10 and 11, because some of the comments we've just heard relate to a different... So just wanted to make that point, make that clear.
Yes, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, good evening again, and thank you for the opportunity to share some words. Clearly, these sites are important for a lot of people, but in particular, the applicant, who has been on an absolute crusade over the last 5 to 6 years to deliver both sites which are allocated for development in the Council's local plan. And I can confirm that we will continue to liaise with residents, the parish, as we move forward, as at this stage these applications are purely outline-only applications, and as mentioned before, we will need to come back and continue that positive collaboration with officers, of which we are grateful for their time and hard work, and we thank them again for their diligence, and as we move forward that will be even more important as we discuss things like landscaping, buffering next to units, whether that be residential and commercial, and we'll make sure we properly engage with the officers and the team within the planning department. We maintain that these applications, this proposal item 10, which was referred to Planning Committee last June, for 16 homes at Middlebrook site, and the commercial scheme at Willowbrook, inclusive of the affordable housing. They are, as written in the officer's report, they are compliant with local plan, and we are here to simply deliver that. However, it is our intention to work with the residents and the parish to deliver what we think is more consensual, which is the first two items we spoke about. However, in terms of items 10 and 11, these applications deliver affordable homes. At Willowbrook, it delivers the new economic floor space required under local plan and a full suite of policy level financial contributions towards schools, local transport, health facilities, open spaces, libraries and community facilities. Just in terms of some of the comments we've heard from previous speakers, Mr Beavis understands and appreciates we will continue that dialogue with him directly as we move forward. In terms of previous levels of consultation and how the council's local plan was adopted, clearly that's been in the public domain for many a year, and I'm not here to comment about the extent of consultation through that process. The Middlebrook site is allocated for commercial, and what we're effectively doing is to make sure that we are injecting that financial capital and resource to deliver much needed new homes and jobs in the area. Members of the committee, in terms of the private access roads which we've discussed, so Winston Farm access, which leads on to Hoe Lane, I do take the point in terms of Hoe Lane and some work which Essex County Council as Highway Authority are looking at in terms of overgrown landscaping. However, Winston Farm track is completely within our control and ownership, which we can improve as we're proposing, and subject to conditions we will implement as officers have recommended. The Chair, members of the Planning Committee, these applications have been in the development and making for many a year. My client, LW Developments, a local SME, have demonstrated the utmost amount of patience and positivity to get to this point. The 2023 applications could have gone to planning appeal, but that is not the approach we want to take, given a local business, and we have demonstrated our commitment to support your officers in their recommendation. Thank you for listening to me, and we would encourage you to support your officer recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, members, just following the speakers, I just want to just make sure that Councillor Whitbread doesn't want to add anything at this point.
Chairman, I've said what I need to say at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, members, I say I'm pausing now. Obviously, we put on pause the discussions on items 12 and 13. I think we ought to now return to those, to item 12 and 13, and complete our decision on items 12 and 13, and then we can discuss items 10 and 11 in more detail. Obviously, now we have heard the information that is relevant for both sets of applications. So, open to members. Councillor Matthews.
Chair, if I may make one more request this evening, please. If the officer could put up that slide he had before, would just be really helpful in this debate, I think. And I will just put on record my thanks to the officer, because this is obviously a very complex case, and he's done a fantastic presentation and made it a lot easier for us to understand. So I would just like to put my thanks on record for that. And the slide where the final slide you had, which was the breakdown of all four, that's the one. Perfect. If that could just stay up on the screen, I think it would be helpful for members as we're discussing. My comments on it, I think the leader famously said once there was something in the local plan that everyone didn't like, and I think this really is a classic case of that. I really sympathise with the residents, and I thank them for their contributions tonight, because it is really important. I know the area well. I know Hoe Lane just cannot cope with more and more pressure, and a lot of it is something else I've touched on this evening about the times are changing. Nasing historically was an area where there was a lot of glass houses. This was small businesses using small vehicles, a lot of nurseries, a lot of small businesses there. That industry, as we've seen in many other applications, is suffering catastrophically, and the only way they're surviving is by scaling up, and obviously scaling up results in much bigger properties, much bigger lorries, much bigger vehicles, and the infrastructure just simply hasn't been upgraded to match that, and I know Essex are looking at that, but it's so important, because there's, as I say, I know the area very well. and it's very, very difficult. When it comes to these particular applications, it's difficult with the highways because as we can see, the roads are privately owned by the developer, so we sort of lack any real control over that, and it is very, very difficult decisions to make this evening. I'm very much still on the fence with things, and I look forward to hearing other contributions. But yeah, I just wanted to say that for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other members? Councillor Morris.
Hi, Mohammed, I just wanted a clarification on one point. So, yeah, I mean, I hear all the local residents and their points of view, and for a lot of it, some of it at least seems to boil down to access. I did send you an email. I just wanted to confirm if I'd understood exactly your response. So this means that because Essex have essentially approved these applications, that we don't really have any grounds for requesting changes or anything like that?
That's correct. In terms of if members seek to refuse on highway safety grounds, that wouldn't be advisable because there is no objection from the highways team.
Okay. So there'd be a risk of overturn at appeal, you mean?
And a cost award, yeah.
Okay.
Given there's no objection from the highways team.
Okay, that seems to be one of the main issues for local residents. Yeah. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Councillor Adekani.
Just wanted to check about viability assessment of the two applications. So when the application 23, 6 affordable housing units, but have they done the assessment combined in both applications in terms of viability to make assessment that there is nothing required on the application 24?
I don't follow, Councillor.
So basically, in terms of affordable housing for application 24, isn't it based on, in terms of the viability assessment, that it actually requires additional affordable housing for application 24? On what basis?
No, for the 24 applications, they are delivering affordable houses. It's set out in the report. They are delivering 8 affordable houses for the 24 scheme, which is the 40% policy requirement. So,
because it's not 20. Yeah, okay. Because I just look at the summary. It doesn't say. It said 21 residential unit. It does. Okay. So they do have 8 affordable for the application 24. Yes.
Included in the 21, there are 8 affordable houses.
Okay, fine. Okay. I wasn't sure because I didn't. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there are sufficient affordable housing on application 24, because that's the one obviously is more appealable in terms of the overall balance of what we need to do in the area. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think Mohammed has confirmed that there are 8 affordable housing, and that is, yep, okay. Right, any other members, any other? Can I just do Councillor Matthews and then come to you? Councillor Matthews.
Thank you. I just want to really make sure I'm clear on this. So with why we're linking the two together, because my initial thoughts looking at all of it is I like a bit of one and a bit of the other. And that would be very nice if we could do a little bit of both. But can the officer, please, and I do apologise if you're going over old ground, but just explain to me again why the link has to be, why we're having to do sort of 12 and 13 versus 10 and 11, please. Thank you.
Well, Councillor, unfortunately we can't pick a mix between the 23 and 24 applications because the makeup of them are very different. So we can't, you can't have 24A with 23B because there'll be too many policy conflicts. So the key reason why, I'll start with the 24 applications, the key reason why they need to be linked in a single section 106 is you have the projected employment space from the Willowbrook site. It's being transferred over to the Middlebrook site, and on the Willowbrook site, in view of the commercial units, there's going to be houses there. So to ensure there's no loss of commercial space, both these applications need to be linked in a single section 106. So, for example, you know, the 21 houses aren't built out without the delivery of the commercial units at Middlebrook. So that's the key reason why they're linked. And again, with the 23 applications, as you know, the commercial space, employment space from the Middlebrook site is being moved over to the Willowbrook site, they need to be linked, so there's no loss of employment floor space. Those are the key reasons why they need to, you know, items 12 and 13 need to be linked together, and items 10 and 11 need to be linked together. We can't pick and mix, otherwise there's quite a few policy conflicts.
Thank you very much for that explanation. It's very frustrating, and I think I've identified the thing I dislike very much about the local plan following that explanation, because that's just immensely frustrating that we have to be in that position. The phrase that's going around in my head is a rock and a hard place, is where I very much feel like we are at the moment, because as the officer said, I would very much like number A with number B, with letter B, sorry, of number 24. So it's very frustrating that that's the situation we're in, but I do understand that that is the policy, and we wouldn't be in a position to go against our own policy. So yeah, thank you for the explanation, but very frustrating.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. I suspect there are several people with similar frustration. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and we do have to follow. It has been explained to us, and I think we do have to heed that. Councillor Lee.
Yes. Sadly, we have to. The road isn't sustainable, but we have like 106 money, but if that's a private road, none of that is going to go towards doing anything to make that any better, is it? So, and it's definitely better putting all the housing with housing and the commercial, because my own experience is I'm having hassle when houses have been built next to somewhere and we're getting a lot of grief. So it definitely needs doing that way, but I do feel sorry for the people there, but there's always been, from when I've been little, it's always been loads of greenhouses and lorries and everything else. And just what's happened is houses have gradually been built along there, and now nobody likes it. But there's no answer for that road, and that's just going to get worse.
It is.
So we'll all get shot in the end. So, but we've got to agree on something.
Thank you. And Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. May I be as, I don't know what the word is, difficult as to put Councillors Whitbread and Balcom on the spot from just a question sort of from the Essex County Highways point of view. Is there, and for you for not knowing, is there a threshold where roads would have to be adopted or meet an adopted standard? I just wonder how, with the new lorries, bin lorries getting through, is there, I don't know.
Thank you, Chairman. And I couldn't give you a proper answer this evening. I'd need to get the written specifications of what it is to adopt a road. But of course, this is in private ownership, which is in itself a different, you know, the private owner would have to go to the county to say, will you adopt this road? They would then say, does it meet our standards to be adopted? But I couldn't tell you offhand this evening, and I'm sure no one would expect me to, the specification that road would need to be. But I, you know, take your point.
So it's interesting because obviously everyone has different ways of doing things. I did a couple of cases, again in previous life, where I think they were for 6 schemes, a place called Barbie, which is up in the sort of lower Midlands. And when that consent was granted, part of the 106 was effectively that the access road actually was, the ownership of it effectively was ceded to the Highways Authority. And I don't know whether that's something we could look to do, but if it's not within the Essex County Council remit, obviously I take it our hands tied.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to come back again. And I take on board your points, and I'm sure officers, when they're looking at the Section 106 requirements, will be looking at how that access road can be improved to the site. But that's, goes at the next stage of this application, doesn't it? And I take on board what Councillor Matthews said around, everyone hates something in the local plan. You have to start from that premise, and it doesn't matter. We're one of the most difficult areas to do a local plan in, but thank God we've got one, bearing in mind what a certain person now has planned for us in the way of housing. No application is easy like this, and of course it's never made easy when you've got a private access road that leads to development. But I would have thought the developer will be going out of their way to improve that private access road, because they eventually want to let their units and sell their houses. So it's in their interest to improve that road and make it as good as it can be. And what I would say this evening is we sat down for an awful long time back in 23 and had this debate about these sites. And officers went away with the developer and came up with the 24 applications with great hard work. I would say it must have been a real piece of work to achieve that balance. And of course it's not easy, and you can't have 23A with 23B, so it's 24A with 23B and that type of thing, because they have to balance off. And it has to be that balance from what was originally agreed within the local plan all those years ago. And that's what's important, because local plans are a thing of balance. And it's not just about delivering homes, it is about delivering the jobs of the future. And I completely agree, only too well, with what Councillor Matthews said about the nature of what's happening in Nasing. It's dreadful to see the increase in the number of large HGVs trundling through the village, tearing up the roads, creating massive cost to the county council and disruption to residents. So I think that goes without saying. But these applications, we can't address all the problems of the world, but I have to say, looking at the 24 applications, they're a giant step forward to what was here in 23. And as you've heard from the parish council, in line with what the parish council are thinking, and in line with what a majority of residents are thinking, you'll never please everybody. We all know that with planning. But, I think everyone has done their best to come up with a solution to these sites. And again, I reiterate, they are in the local plan, and therefore they are there to be agreed in one way or the other. And I think, on balance, the residents and parish council would rather see 24 than 23. And we all know that if they went to appeal, 23 could find favour with Bristol or some government body.
Thank you. Right, members, any further comments? Okay, I think that was, it was good that we actually finished the discussion with that input from the ward councillors, so thank you very much indeed. Right, okay, members, I think we are at the point of moving to some votes on this. So, as previously mentioned, we're going to be voting on items 12 and 13 first, and then the vote on items 10 and 11. So, item 12, this is EPF 188824. It's outline planning permission with some matters reserved, with a recommendation to approve with conditions and also subject to a Section 106 legal agreement. All those members in favour of granting, please show.
None, Chairman. Oh,
sorry, hang on a minute. Yes. Yes, to approve. Yes, so recommendation is to approve. So all those in favour of approving the outline application, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So in that case, members have approved, it's not granted permission, we have approved the outline planning permission. Moving on to item 13, which is outline planning permission, EPF 1889/24. And that's the outline application for the erection of 21 family homes. The officer recommendation is to approve, and is to approve with conditions subject to the Section 106 legal agreement. All those in favour of the outline planning permission, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, outline planning permission has been agreed.
Chair, if I can clarify just at this point, just want to confirm members are happy to delegate any non-material changes to the conditions and the Section 106 agreement for both the 25 applications.
Members, I'm assuming so, yes, because I think that's exactly what we've just voted for. Yes, thank you very much, Mohammed, but yes, we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, so moving back then to the vote on items 10 and 11. Lost my agenda, sorry, I've just lost my place, sorry. Here we are, so moving now to a vote for agenda item 10, EPF 0751, which is outline planning permission at Middlebrook Farm, and that the recommendation is to approve with conditions and subject to a Section 106 legal agreement. All those in favour of approving, please show. Sorry?
I don't see how we can agree with both lots for the same place when they're different.
That's what we're deciding now.
I know, well, you're doing my head in.
If there's any consolation, I think it's doing several people's heads in. But we do still have to vote on items 10 and 11. So could you please show if you're in favour of approving?
None, Chairman.
Those against approval?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Okay, so we haven't voted in favour of approval, so therefore I need to look at a proposal, please. Councillor Matthews.
I propose that we do not approve item 10 on the grounds. Do we not need grounds? We just. Can our sorry to have to ask this question, but can our reason be because we've approved the other scheme? We are in a different.
Can we?
Have you got any suggestions?
No.
Can we say that we...
Councillor Whitbread.
Chairman, unless you've already got a solution to the situation, could we not refuse on the basis of we felt the location was unsuitable for 16 residential units and the impact on the area, environmental impact?
I'm looking to officers to comment on that as a reason. It is a material consideration.
But it has to be justified and reasonable, and whether it harms, is it character and appearance, what is it, what's the reason, what's the policy it's against, why is it contrary to the development plan? Councillor Matthews.
Councillor Matthews, thank you.
sorry, this is a very difficult situation we're in. Can I just ask a question to the officer? If all were approved, what happens is, obviously, you've made the recommendation to recommend it for approval on all the 4 applications. So in the event that all are approved, what happens there?
Then, similar to the extension that we looked at earlier, the applicant has the choice of implementing either scheme if you look at both together, but what they can't do is mix and match, because we'd have a legal agreement to ensure they can't do that. But they would have the choice between the 2023 or the 24 application.
Councillor Adkani.
So if we approve the items A on 23, so obviously I'm for residential, but that because they are joint, so if you approved 24A, 24B and 23A, but reject 23B, which obviously I'm against the commercial in that, so effectively they only have a choice to go with application 24. Is that correct or not?
Both sets of applications need to be linked together, so they couldn't implement A without B and B without A.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, no, thank you. No, thank you very much.
I'm just trying to think of the way forward on this. We've agreed to grant items 12 and 13.
Yes.
Which leaves
and we've actually
10 and 11 in abeyance. What would happen if the applicant was to withdraw applications 10 and 11? Are they not allowed to?
I don't think they're allowed. Funny enough, I did actually ask that in briefing. I did ask that question in briefing. My understanding is that they can't be allowed, they can't withdraw at this meeting at this stage. Unless anything's changed since Chairman's briefing. Let me just give them a chance to... members, if you could just bear with us for 2 minutes, if we could just let the officers have a quick discussion. Just wait, please. Sorry, members, it is very unusual that we do have this situation. Okay. I am just going to come very briefly back. On this rare occasion, I'm actually going to let the applicant's agent come back very briefly. And then I'll turn to you for some nice if I may. So if I could just let the applicant's agent, this is such an unusual case and it's not normal, but...
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, but I do appreciate this opportunity to jump back into the conversation. It is very unusual. I have the applicant developing it to my right. We've had a conversation, and to help the council and to help members of this district, in the event that items 10 and 11 were to be approved, our preference is to deliver items 12 and 13. We're here to deliver the residential resident consensual scheme, which the parish supports. So hopefully that's helped members deliberation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, and Councillor Dadd.
I'm wondering if it's possible to defer this one to ask the developers to withdraw items 10 and 11.
I'm not sure that we can ask them to withdraw.
Whether the legal...
We can defer. We could defer. Again, it would be unusual because it's already been deferred. We have actually taken a vote to not grant item 10. But I don't see any reason why we can't defer. If you just bear with me, I'm just going to have to ask the officers for some advice. more minutes. We are just double checking the legalities and making sure that we're doing the right thing. I think it has been very clear the way forward that we would like, and I very much thank the applicant's agent for being able to add to that. We are just now looking at the most effective and efficient way of moving forward. Thank you. Apologies again for the slight delay. We did just have to check the Constitution and things. So at the moment, we have just voted against approval for item 10. Listen to what members have said and taking advice. I'd like to propose that we actually defer item 10. And the reason being is to give the applicants time to reconsider their opinion and possibly withdraw that application. Okay, so that proposal, no, just doing 10 at the moment. I'm afraid to say we're going to have to go through the same process for it. Well, we're going to have to go through a voting process for 11, but I'm proposing that we defer the application in order to give the applicants time to reconsider. The applicants have obviously listened to all the discussions. I think members of the public, parish council have made it very clear the way forward that they would like, but it would give the applicants an opportunity to withdraw the application. So I do need a seconder for that proposal. Councillor Dadd, thank you. Members, if you are in favour of requesting a deferral, would you please show?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. That item is deferred. We do now have to look at item 11. The recommendation from the planning officers were to approve with conditions. This is another outline application. It's the 23 application. Subject again to legal agreements. All those in favour of approval,
Sorry,
Councillor
can we
Datt?
not ask for a deferral before we make a decision?
I've been informed that it's best to go this route and then, okay. So all those in favour of approving item 11, EPF 0752, please show.
None, Chairman.
Thank you. All those against approving, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So we have not approved item 11. Along similar reasons, I would like to propose that that item is deferred in order for the applicants to reconsider their position following the discussions heard tonight and possibly withdraw their application. All those in favour of deferring that item, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
That item has also been deferred. Sorry. I possibly did need a seconder for that.
It's been a very long evening. Yeah. I'll quickly second it for you and we'll move on.
I was going to...
Members, I do apologise. I should have asked for a seconder. Do I have to take the vote again, or are we allowed to?
Yes, we'd better just do the vote.
I'm very sorry. In order to be totally correct, and I do apologise, members, I'm proposing the deferral. Councillor Matthews has agreed to second that deferral. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Apologies again, but that item has also been deferred. Thank you. Members, that has brought us to the end, almost to the end of tonight's agenda. I just have to ask if there's any other business.
None, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. In that case, members, I am closing the meeting at 21:33. Thank you for your patience and your forbearance.